and welcome to part 4 of Fiducia's Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Typology Insights. Here I'm going to be describing briefly to you how putting really good context and relevant information into your typologies decreases your regulatory risk. Now, in this context, regulatory risk means the potential for loss for your business if you do not meet your AML CFT minimum requirements. So that loss could be financial in terms of you could be compelled by your AML CFT supervisor to put more resources into your compliance regime. You could end up with a fine, which, as we know, could be in the millions of dollars. The loss could be reputational. You could end up on the front page of the Herald on a slow news day if you end up with a public warning, or even, terrible worst case scenario, your compliance officer ends up in jail, God forbid. Regulatory risk is lowered when your supervisor can trust and believe that you're on top of your AML compliance regime and what you need to do. How can you do that? So I want to have you imagine for a second that you are a junior member of the FMA, the Financial Markets Authority, and it's your job today to read 2 risk assessments from 2 companies that you supervise, and they're going to be fund managers. So you get 2 documents on your desk, and your job is to look at both and recommend to your team which of these fund managers is most likely to need a bit of more follow-up from you, maybe an on-site inspection, maybe a bit of a poke around. You just want to keep looking into them because you're not 100% as certain that they're on top of what they need to do. So you open up the first document, Fund Manager 1's risk assessment. They've got the bog standard thing that you read everywhere. Yes, they're a managed investment scheme and their products. Okay, methods of delivery are partners, partner agents. They assert that all their customers are resident in New Zealand, but that doesn't kind of answer the question in terms of any other exposure that they may have. You can give them a point for reading the Sector Risk Assessment 2017, which puts out 3 generic typologies that all fund managers are potentially exposed to. Imagine you have 30,000 words or more waffle placed on top of that, but by and large, that's the information you're able to glean. You then move to Fund Manager 2. Now, Fund Manager 2's documents are about the same length, probably no longer, but they've got information about their products. They've got context, they've got specifics, they've got facts and figures. They haven't just told you they're a managed investment scheme. You can here see that they're a property collective scheme, and their particular niche is regional retail and childcare developments. That gives you a whole bunch of information to work with. They too work with partner agents, but they've specified here it's authorized financial advisors, which gives you a whole picture about the regulatory regime and the implications of who those agents are. They give you actual facts and figures as to who a high net worth individual is in the context of that business, and the types of funds and value of the customers they're dealing with the syndicates that they're dealing with. They've mentioned specific countries and ways in which that company may be exposed to other jurisdictions. They've also got the same 3 typologies as Fund Manager 1, but because they've used the context from this business profile, they're able to really clearly specify the offshore fund exposure that they may have. They've been able to really clearly say that lump sums are actually really common, and they're not going to be doing EDD on lump sums just because. They're going to do EDD on lump sums on these types of lump sums because in the context of their business, it constitutes a higher risk. Same with payments from third parties. It is nonsensical to do EDD on all payments from third parties in the fund management industry. It's a way of doing business. But Fund Manager 1 set themselves up for that. They have no context. Fund Manager 2 has a really clear sense of when it would be risky and when it's just business as usual. As a junior FMA staff member, who are you going to recommend has their act together? Most likely. Doesn't need further digging around. Your regulatory risk doesn't need to increase. It's going to be Fund Manager 2. Fund Manager 1 is less likely to have their act together. When you present your context and your clear, specific information to your supervisor, it decreases your regulatory risk. It allows them to trust and understand that you've got your act together and they can move on and look at somebody else. I encourage you, have a look through their eyes at your documents today. If it doesn't look like, in their eyes, you're on top of it, what can you do to demonstrate that you are? I'll see you next time for the last session.